Welcome to The Social. And if you've been watching all week, you know it is Local News Week that continues here on The Social. We'd like to welcome from CTV Kitchener, Jessica Smith. Welcome to the conversation, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me. I am honored to be here, a big fan of this show, and to be a part of Local News Week. It's pretty incredible. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Well, thank you, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say about this topic and all of them throughout the show. A lot of people reacting to this first story that we're diving into, a lot of tense scenes that unfolded in Toronto's Trinity Bellwoods Park yesterday, a lot of confrontations breaking out between protesters and police. City crews evicted people living in encampments there. We want to get your reaction to this. It's blowing up across the country, really. And do you have a right to live in a public space like that? Jessica, I'm going to start with you.
I mean, the key word there, Mel, is public. It is a public space, and the people are there because potentially there is nowhere else for them to go, or they don't feel safe going into the shelters that do exist and are currently running. Now, following the story along, Toronto Mayor John Tory said the show of force was because they were expecting protesters to be there. But you have that trifecta of police, security, and fences. It is overwhelming for people. So I can understand on both sides, you know, why there was such a big reaction and why there continues to be such a big reaction, because we've seen this pandemic shine a light on a lot of the gaps in our systems right across the board. And for our community members that are experiencing homelessness, this is a really challenging time. And to go into the shelter system during COVID is scary. I'm speaking to people here locally, doing stories here in Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. You know, they say it's a little bit scary. And for some of them, they can't bring their most precious items in. And for people, if that's all you have in the world and you can't bring that inside, it can be, you know, a choice of whether you go into shelter or you don't. To see what happened yesterday, it was overwhelming, almost emotional to see, one, that people were standing up for these folks that can't stand up for themselves potentially, and on the other hand, seeing people have to make this really difficult decision during a pandemic.
Yeah, the optics were tough to see. I think it was the Canadian Association of Journalists who said it looked like police were swatting a fly with a hammer. As a journalist was actually arrested on scene yesterday. I do want to say John Tory has responded. He's all over the media today talking about this. I do want to at least put out there his side of the story, because he says that this encampment, and many of them across Toronto, were visited at least 20,000 times by workers who do outreach for those experiencing homelessness, and that many people were offered not to just come into the shelter system, but hotel rooms. And so he said, I want to put it out there. We have tried and tried and tried to speak with them. 12 people at this specific encampment did take the city up on the offer and did accept housing, not in a shelter. And these were the last 20. Does that make a difference, though?
I mean, these are still only stopgap measures, right? I think what the essential issue is here is that, like, A, why are we criminalizing poverty? And B, these are all temporary fixes to what is, in many cases, a kind of systemic and circular kind of problem. Some people get temporary work and then they end up back in the being homeless again. So we have to find a solution to this, and I don't think these temporary measures are it. I will say that there's an interesting thing coming out of Medicine Hat in Alberta. The Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness has said that Medicine Hat is basically what's called functional zero, meaning that they have no more than 3 people experiencing chronic homelessness in a community for 3 straight months at a time. They have this integrated system where they find out about who is experiencing homelessness. I'm not quite sure exactly how it works, but you can enter and access this database, and then those people the outreach workers actually contact those people, and they make sure that they put them in housing. And I just think, obviously, this is a community that's maybe, you know, 63,000 somewhere in there. So it's not the size of an urban center, but it gives you clues into, I think, a system that might work better. We need housing and we need stability, because people can't think about anything else until you fix that.
You're right, Cynthia. I mean, as you mentioned, that is a starting case study that people should be looking into. And what's happening in Toronto right now is really just a fraction of what's been happening for decades in the Pacific Northwest. My other hometown is Vancouver. Vancouver and Seattle have had tent city issues for a long, long time. And just last year, the city of Vancouver, the taxpayers were on the hook for $3.5 million because of tent city related issues. That's policing, that's cleanup. So that's the community as a whole that is paying for these kinds of situations, when a lot of people argue, to your point, Cynthia, that money would be better spent on practical housing solutions that support people who are experiencing homelessness. And not just like erecting a building and being like, here, go live there, but thinking it through with community integration. In Vancouver, a lot of people who, like the people in Toronto, were encouraged to seek out shelter, refused and turned it down and preferred to stay outside. And one of the reasons, Jessica, you mentioned, they can't bring their belongings in, and you know, there are restrictions. Exactly. But the other reason too is that a lot of these places only isolate them more from the community. It's almost like they build these places. It's like, hey, go over there, leave the rest of us alone. It's not integrated with the community, so there's no socialization. And socialization is one of the words that has been used by people who advocate for the homeless population in Vancouver about what makes programs work. It's making sure that people feel part of something as opposed to a problem that others want to ignore. So it's a multi-level, very complicated issue, but it can't just be fixed by saying, here, go over there and stay there, and it's warm, that's it, period.
Yeah, but am I the only one? Like, and I don't know that this is just unique to Toronto, but I am shocked and dismayed when I'm driving into the city. I see towers going up everywhere.
I had the exact same thought, Mel.
Right? And then juxtaposed with our like just exploding homeless population. And so there's a disconnect. There is a disconnect. And to me, the disconnect must involve developers. There's only a 1%, or at least pre-pandemic, 1% vacancy for housing in Toronto. There's a 12-year waiting list if you want to rent an apartment that's a 1-bedroom. A 12-year waiting list, like, you might as well just throw yourself off the list. That's ridiculous and untenable. So to me, the bridge has got to bring developers who are making millions and millions of dollars, throwing up towers on every street corner available. And I think there's got to be more public and private partnership where the developers are brought to the table, the city is brought to the table, because P.S., they are both profiting majorly over this housing boom that we're in. And I'd like to see things like, if you have a city-owned piece of land that the city says, we will lease or sell you this land, developer A, but a certain percentage of the housing must be subsidized or affordable. Or, you know, have a certain amount of, you know, the kind of a slush fund where you basically say, for every 20 units that you build that are over $500,000, you are also responsible then on this piece of land to provide subsidized or affordable housing. If you don't have public and private partnership here, the people who make money will only want to make more, and the people who don't have enough money will continue to end up in the streets.
I think, too, it's a fine line between a hop, skip, and a jump to being on the other side of the situation, right? We've seen the pandemic financially change people's lives in drastic ways. So there are people who are experiencing homelessness now who, you know, a year ago, 2 years ago, weren't in that position, but things can change so quickly. So for the folks who are in, you know, those encampments, you know, we see these numbers growing constantly because people's lives have been rocked dramatically. And, you know, in other city centers, you know, you see more of the hidden homeless. So it comes down to people couch surfing. So just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. But to the point about community, people need to feel like you still care about them, regardless of their situation, because it takes nothing for your life to change overnight for some folks and say, you know what, like I can't afford to live where I live anymore, and your situation can change just that quickly.
You're speaking about empathy, and I think that's really good, but I do think we have to address a kind of elephant in the room, which is certainly prevalent in this city and I'm sure across Canada, which is NIMBYism, which is that people can pretend that they have empathy and care from a distance, but then as soon as an encampment shows up in their park, in their backyard, in their neighborhood where their kids play, or a safe injection site, the conversation starts to shift, and a lot of people don't want to be honest about that, and it's a complicated one to unpack. And And so until we can really bring our full spectrum of empathy, I think, to the table and be honest about some of those issues, I don't know how we're going to also move forward.
That's a great point, Cynthia. That is to be honest about it, right? Because it is, as you said, it's very complicated. Nobody wants to be living in a park in a tent if they have other options. And frankly, I don't think a lot of people would want to see that in their neighborhoods if we live in a perfect world. Everybody has safe, affordable housing, right? So let's be honest about that. You're right, Cynthia. Do we want to live in homes where there are people experiencing homelessness just down the street where your children are playing in those playgrounds? I understand if you are a parent that might be a level of concern. I think that is, important to address, that you can have those feelings. It's where to place them. Is the answer, though, calling the cops on these people? Or is the answer, hey, we actually now have to get serious about social programs and ending economic policies that create conditions where people are this close, as Jessica said, from homelessness, like one paycheck away. And for too long, we let that happen, from real estate issues to taxation issues to our healthcare programs being underfunded. All of that. And so, Canada, can we get serious about that? Be honest about this, you not wanting this in your backyard. Okay, but then what do we do about it?
Yeah.
And Cynthia and Lainey, to your point, we've had issues and ongoing conversations out here with the safe consumption sites going in around the region and people saying that there's a need for them and supporting it. But like you said, Cynthia, not maybe necessarily in their neighborhoods. So there's that balance of, yes, we want to help these folks who are in desperate need of support and community support and programming and services, but they don't necessarily want to see it that close. But at the end of the day, we are all human beings who deserve respect and support and empathy. But it's a very delicate line, and it is a very loaded conversation when it comes to making sure there is the support available, but also making sure that everybody can be safe.
Yeah. We're going to leave it there. Certainly not the end of this situation, both in Toronto, small term and long term. And so we'll continue to keep an eye on it. But on the other side of the break, we'll debate. Do you think about what is appropriate or not appropriate to wear when you're meeting someone? Really, really important. We'll debate after this.
Coming up, stars of the action-packed adventure series Kung Fu, Olivia Liang and Eddie Liu, on remaking a television classic by kicking butt and breaking barriers.
Welcome back. It is local news week here at The Social. We're welcoming from CTV Kitchener Jessica Smith, and you can join this conversation as well on social media.
All right, what would you wear to meet a head of state? There are questions being raised about the outfits that the Biebers wore to meet French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte. A writer in Jezebel says Haley's dress was a particularly puzzling choice. So were their outfits really that inappropriate, or were they appropriate?
Listen, I know a lot of people were jumping on Haley for this, but she's not a head of state herself. She's not a first lady. She is, a young star model from America. Justin, is who he is. So I thought it was very appropriate for the fact of who they were and where they were. And it turns out that Michelle on Twitter, you agree with me because you said, considering they are not members of any royal family and therefore not subject to any dress code, I'd say it was fine. He's a pop star. She's the daughter of an actor, and they're meeting in the fashion center of the universe. Very chic. I agree. Guys, I love a good cutout. If I got a crisscross that's just covering my boobs and shows belly, gosh, is that not the perfect Melissa Grello outfit? So, of course, I co-sign this. But she is taking a page out of a First Lady's playbook because fashion diplomacy is a thing. Wearing something that makes a statement on the world stage is a thing. And Haley was wearing an amazing designer by the name of Laquan Smith. He is a young black designer in America. He was taken under the wing by Andre Leon Talley. There are so few black designers in America. And the fact that she's putting him on the world stage, that is right out of like a Kate Middleton, Meghan Markle, Michelle Obama playbook. So I'm living for it. What standard do we have for her? I get it's the Macrons, but it's also Paris.
I think it's incredible. I mean, it's a little bit of sternum for me personally to be showing, but again, it's your body, it's your choice, and you know, if you feel comfortable, you feel beautiful inside and out, why not? For Bieber, I mean, I've seen him in magazine covers, and you see him all the time wearing these incredible outfits. I maybe would have put on a different suit, but at the end of the day, again, fashion is up to the person.
When's the last time you saw him that cleaned up?
To be fair,
that's true.
It's been a hot minute. To be honest, it's been a hot minute, and he looks. I mean, they're both, you know, beautiful people inside and out. But for me, I would have maybe like a little less of the sternum showing. But again, it's your choice and your body, and if it floats your boat and you feel good, and again, you're in Paris, why not?
It's the runners, though, a little bit. The runners are saying something, and they do. I mean, yes, it's chic and everything like that, but I do think there is a certain. Listen, I think it's that I can't relate to it. I will never meet French people of this kind of status. I can't imagine what I would think about. I imagine the stylist came, it sort of gave her a bunch of options, and she chose this one. I wouldn't wear that in regular life. She would. That's great. I think you got to wear things that reflect you. I think back to Barbra Streisand in the 70s. She showed up to meet the Queen, and she wore like a cape, this kind of like very dramatic looking cape thing. Like that, somebody might see
like a wizard.
Right? I know. And then Lady Gaga, when she met the Queen as well, she wore this latex outfit. So it's her. So to your point, Mel, I think it is something important that you have to wear something that, you know, suits you. I will never wear cutouts. Mel, I could see you wearing this outfit.
I could totally see Mel wearing this outfit. I think she's sourcing it right now, seeing if like Laquan Smith, where she can get the Laquan Smith in Canada. I also think, you know, Mel, you read the tweet or message, I think, from Michelle, who described Hailey as a daughter of an actor. Hailey's a professional model. Actually, that's her job. She's one of the top models, in fact, a brand name model. I mean, people know her, people want her in their campaigns. So when you're Justin Bieber and when you're a Hailey Bieber and you are a pop star and a model and you get invited to meet with the French president, in a way, you are ambassadors for something. Like, you know, Cynthia, you and I aren't getting invited to meet with Emmanuel Macron, right? But if we were, it would have been because we had done something, that we were representing something. So for both of them, like, I think that is also what's important. Like, they were representing a message. For Justin Bieber, he was there in France during Music Week, this festival that happens in France. So, you know, representing himself as an ambassador for music, that attire, I think, fits properly. And for Hailey Bieber, representing herself as an ambassador of fashion, which essentially is the job description of a professional model, she was doing her job, actually. In fact, I think it was very well thought out, a very deliberate choice, and it was a work choice.
Okay, speaking of music, here's a question. Is Celine Dion hoping the Habs will go on? Hockey fans are questioning her loyalties after the Vegas Golden Knights shared a photo of her in a Knights helmet during the semifinals game last night. The picture looks kind of made up, but it didn't stop Habs fans from sharing their rage online. The singer, of course, was born in Quebec, but has lived in Las Vegas for quite some time. So how do you pick like, is there such a thing as like extreme team loyalty? Is this offensive, Jessica?
I mean, I was an Argos cheerleader for a very long time, 9 seasons and 6 of those as captain. So I am a die-hard Argos fan. But I did live in Saskatchewan for about 3.5 years. So I get that the pull of wanting to support your hometown team and then your new hometown team, right? So I did look into getting a half and half jersey. It was very expensive, but I just decided to pick and choose days where I would wear, you know, green on the top and blue on the bottom. But I love the idea of using this icon. Celine is an icon. I don't care where you live, who you are, you know who she is. Your heart will go on for her regardless of who she supports. And I fully believe you can love more than one team. There's room in your heart.
There has to be.
Well, not for everyone.
In your heart, because
not for everyone, Jessica. Sorry, go ahead, Mel.
I was going to say there has to be room in your heart to love more than one. Because I don't know how many more jerseys I can buy to wipe my tears as a Maple Leafs fan. But if I was going to choose a second runner-up, it would be the Golden Knights. I'm going to tell you why. A, they practically are Canadian. The vast majority of the team's members and the players, they're Canadian. The head coaches, the first one, the current one, they're all Canadian. Like, that team is more Canadian than a lot of Canadian teams. So I'm okay to go for the Golden Knights, even though they were trolling the Habs a little, and I didn't like that. But haha, it's funny. And guess what? The Golden Knights have done, in the 4 seasons of their existence, more than the Maple Leafs have done since they last won the Cup in '67. So while I love the Maple Leafs, how much more can we take? We got to find another team. You got to be willing to switch allegiances.
There's a word for you, you know. The word is bandwagon.
Yeah. And unapologetically,
that is the word.
How long can I bleed blue? It's getting really sad now.
Well, let me give you a counterpoint to that from Arlene on Twitter. Arlene says, the thought of supporting another team except your hometown one is making my head explode. I don't care where you live or work or your family is. You must, Arlene says, and should only support your team where you were born. Arlene, always and forever a suffering Maple Leafs fan. So, hey, Mel, Arlene is bleeding like you too, but she is not about to jump on the Golden Knights bandwagon. I will say, though, Arlene, you have one privilege as someone who was born in Toronto and support the Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs have a classic design and logo. The colors are great. Everybody recognizes it. It virtually hasn't changed through the years. My other hometown is Vancouver. I married a Vancouver Canucks diehard fan. One of the reasons why it's hard for me to wear a Vancouver Canucks jersey is because, come for me, Vancouver, I don't care. Your jersey is not so good. It's changed so many times. There are so many different colors. It's not cute. Like, you can't make up your mind. Oh, I will be in trouble, and maybe I won't be allowed back in Vancouver. But I'm saying, like, pick a design that you want to stick with for decades, and then maybe, like, the jersey will be more wearable. Because I'm telling you, you go to a Vancouver Canucks game, there's easily 6 different designs of jerseys worn by the fans. If you can't have any cohesiveness, then what's the point?
I don't know exactly, but I'm just going to take this new different gear as the non-sporto person on the panel. It always has confounded me that there's no other real analogy in the world where you would be so adamantly attached to one thing. Like, for example, music. You're allowed to like more than one band. If that band is touring your area, you're going to support that band.
That is not
you can
true.
Also wear.
That is not true. Rolling Stones people are always making fun of Beatles people, and then there's a fight with the Beatles and NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. That happens all the time.
Because of the competition, I think. I think it's because of the competition element. Well, who knew it'd get there? But we are going to take a break. We'll be right back after this. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. That was a ton of fun to have you. We've got social media. We've got our podcast. Everybody stay safe, and we'll see you next time.